All right, we're going to finish this lesson by having a look at how transformations of points can actually be expressed in a rule of an entire function. All right, so the example we've got here is that we've been given a rule is expressed as xy. This colon means here's the rule, and then the rule is y equals whatever x is and squared. So it's just a basic parabola. All right, so this is how we read this rule. This is called mapping notation, and we're going to have a look at how the transformation can be expressed like this. All right, so it tells you then that the xy maps to, so the original maps to x plus 2 comma y plus 4. All right, so this means that there has been a translation of the x coordinate 2 units and a translation of the y coordinate 4 units. So this is the same as the image, and this is the same as the image of y. So x image equals the original plus 2, and the y image equals the original plus 4. All right, now that's not really helpful at this point, because what we're being asked to find is the new rule. All right, now previously we've dealt with points, but this time we have a rule, and the only rule we've been given is y equals x squared. And you might notice that uses the original y and the original x, but these two things here both equal the images of x and y. So the way around that is to rearrange them into x, the original equals. I'll move the 2 across, so it becomes image minus 2. This one will become, when the 4 moves across, it will become y equals image minus 4. And then you're just going to substitute those in place of x and y in this rule here to find out what the transformed rule of the new equation looks like. So it's going to be y image minus 4 equals, and now you have to put brackets in because this sits in place of the x, and the square obviously happens to all of the x, not just the variable. Now you might be wondering, hold on a second, the original information told us that the y gets moved upwards, whereas this looks like it's a downwards. But then you'd have to remember that to read transformations, it has to be in the form y equals. So when you move the 4 across, it becomes a positive, and there is your vertical translation up. Interestingly, another thing that pops out is this here, negative 2, is the opposite of the transformation we got told happened, which at the start was 2 units to the right. When it gets rearranged, it automatically becomes the opposite of what it was, which is interestingly how we read these transformations. So if you were to see this now, you would already know that that meant 2 units right, and that meant 4 units up. All right, but because of the way this happens, it takes care of itself, and you don't have to worry about changing the sign. So to recap, when we transform a rule, we have to first of all rearrange the image equations into the original equals, and then sub in those two equations in place of x and y, and rearrange to become y image equals, and that will allow us to see what the new transformed rule looks like. We'll have a look at this example in the book. It uses a lot of fancy notation, and you might recognize this from last year, where this was called function notation. It means that this function of whatever the input is, function of x. So whatever I put in here, I have to follow a rule. And it goes on to tell me that the function equals 1 on x image. All right, this means that whatever I input, I have to apply this rule to, and that becomes the y value. So if x was 1, then you'd have f of 1 equals 1 over 1, which is just 1, so y equals 1. So the coordinate point for that would be 1, 1. And we notice that is just the basic rule for a hyperbola. All right, so then it goes on to tell us that it has a translation 3 units in the positive direction of the x-axis, which is that way, so 3 units right. It has 2 units in the negative direction of the y-axis, which is that way, so 2 units down. All right, so now we've got our images, x apostrophe, y apostrophe, and we have our originals. All right, so we know that we take the originals and we move it 3 units right, and that will equal the image. we know that we take our original y and we move it 2 units down, and that will be the image. And just like in the previous example, the only thing we've been given is the rule in y equals, not in image equals. So we have to rearrange both of these into y equals. So moving over this way, we'll have x image minus 3 equals the original, and y image plus 2 equals the original. All right, now notice that those are the opposites of what we wanted to have happen, but remember, it will all work out in the end. So now we have y equals 1 on x, and we're just going to substitute in these two equations in place of y and x. So the y was equal to y image plus 2 equals 1 over x image minus 3. And we'll get the y image by itself. 1 over x image minus 3 minus 2. And now let's read the transformations we already know about. So this indicates 2 units down, which is what we wanted back up here. And this indicates 3 units right, because we have to read the opposite, and that is the same as what we had originally. So to recap, finally, when you are given transformation of a rule, you need to first of all find out the rule for the image, then rearrange it into x equals, then substitute it into the rule in place of x and y, and really you could stop at this step here, but I like to go one step further so we have this y equals form. To finish off, one little helpful thing that it might be you'd probably want to write into your book is this idea where we can transform a rule. So we can transform a rule using the following ideas: that horizontal translations occur inside the brackets with the x. So this is plus or minus h. Oops, I'll use the blue one again. There. All right. So that's horizontal translations, and vertical translations occur outside the brackets, where it would normally, remember these two forms here, where it would normally be over the other side like that. So if we were to say x plus or minus h blue. All right, so if we were to look at this equation here, you would see that there is a vertical translation occurring to the y point and a horizontal translation occurring to the x value. All right, so if it's written in this form, you can see that whatever it's next to is where the transformation is happening. So if it's k, it's next to y. If it's h, it's next to x. If it's written in the more standard form like this, then you know that the thing that happens outside the brackets, where it's not affecting the x value, is vertical, and the thing that happens inside the brackets with the x value is horizontal. So just make a note of that, because that will pop up for in the future.